Hi, HRN listeners. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary, and we have a really fun campaign and an ask for you. This 15th anniversary tour is aiming to bring you closer to unique food and music experiences in some of the most exciting cities in America. All the while, we're raising funds to support our work empowering the next generation of food systems storytellers through our fellowship programs. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and be entered into a raffle in the city of your choice to win a dinner for two at a noteworthy restaurant and tickets for two to a concert at a prominent local venue. We have incredible partners in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Asheville, and Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who have donated a meal for two and two tickets to a concert of the winner's choice. And all donations help fund our fellowship programs, where we're helping to build essential workforce readiness skills and food system storytelling skills. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by 100 Bogart Street, a co-working building in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Need a professional place to work from? Learn more by visiting 100bogart.com.
This week on Meat and Three, we're telling the stories behind iconic dishes. We learn what it will take to save New York's most famous egg cream, discover the importance of the goat neck in the East Village, and take a trip to India for delicious flatbreads.
Our customers who come in to get egg creams and t-shirts, they love to talk about their childhood or their teenage years or their college years.
I was living in Nepal, in northern India, and out there's a real famous dish, a classic dish I should say, is called paya.
Parathe wali gali, or as it awkwardly translates in English, the lane of the stuffed flatbread makers, is probably one of the most popular food streets in Old Delhi.
Tune in to Meat and Three, HRN's weekly food news roundup, wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Luke Griffin, and you're listening to Bushwick Podcast, local stories for a strong community. Each episode, we take you behind the scenes of the artists, activists, and entrepreneurs whose journeys collide in Bushwick, a special Brooklyn neighborhood that's changing faster by the day. Few things are as consequential to that change as zoning laws, the rules that say what can be built and where here in the neighborhood. Today, Bushwick is being considered for what's called a rezoning, the city's formal process for changing those rules. And everyone from city government officials to local nonprofit leaders seems to have a different opinion on what those new rules should look like. But one group in the neighborhood is attempting to stop the process altogether before it can change the face of Bushwick.
Yeah, rezoning is racist, is completely racist, and we are no longer, we're voicing this out, and we're no longer, being timid about it, and I think that a lot of folks need to understand that.
This week, we sat down with one of the leaders behind a group fighting to take control of Bushwick's destiny from the city's bureaucracy and put it into the hands of the community. It's Thursday, November 7th, and this episode is called The Battle for Bushwick. Nancy Torres is part of the team behind Mi Casa, no es su casa, a group working to stop gentrification in Bushwick and around the city.
So my name is Nancy Torres. I grew up in Bushwick, and I recently joined Mi Casa, no es su casa in 2019, this year. I have been involved in the periphery in the past year since 2014. That had Mi Casa, no es su casa had initiated, but until this year, I finally got involved, and I'm an official collective member.
You may remember Mi Casa, no es su casa from our episode An Action at the Bushwick Block Party earlier this year, when the group staged an art protest at one of the neighborhood's biggest events.
So Mi Casa, no es su casa is an artist and anti-gentrification collective. So we're using art as a weapon of to call out gentrification, to talk about anti-capitalism, to talk about the specific issues that are affecting brown and black folks, and that is all tied to gentrification. So we are using Mi Casa, no es su casa started with the illumination lights of the placards across the city with stating things like decolonize the hood, what else? Brooklyn is not for sale. And all of that came about to bring out a way where first Black and brown folks have always been doing art. But as well now connecting it to tying it to our survival. Like there was just so much harassment and harassment and like pulling of our pulling off the roots, I guess I would say, of our neighborhood and stating all these like developers and landlords taking advantage. So the folks who began it we're really wanting to have something out, and not just in the daylight, especially at night where things happen and a lot of folks you pass by the neighborhood and you think, okay, you don't see it, you feel like it may still be the same, but you necessarily don't know that landlords and developers are knocking every day of every hour to get folks to get out of the neighborhood or to sell their homes. And so that's how it began.
Since we last spoke with the group, they've been active at other events around the city.
Recently, in October, and it's been about 2 weeks, I believe, we recently had an action against the Department of City Planning, and it was an initiative across the 5 neighborhoods. And this was many folks, Chinatown Art Brigade, Take Back the Bronx, band came about. We really wanted to just call out this DCP because of their, anti-racist. We wanted to call them out to state that they have the power to continue to remove people from their homes in a very hierarchical way. They're not necessarily doing it coming into their neighborhood, but they are approving rezonings and they're approving many different initiatives in the city that are allowing for developers to come in here, specifically in towards gentrification. So many different folks from the Bronx, from Queens, Queens Neighborhood United came out in the city, and we protested in Zuccotti Park and showed up at the front of the building of DCP at 50 Broadway and really wanted to call them out. And it was really, we used art. We had so many banners that stated, DCP needs to be shut down. It's not useful anymore. At this point, it's, if you are not helping people, if you're not increasing if you're allowing for folks to be displaced and moved out of the neighborhoods without any sort of consequences, this is a consequence. We're going to come and then disrupt your business. We're going to come and interrupt you because we can no longer just sit back and wait for folks to have these meetings about us and that are not for us and make decisions that are not for us.
I imagine that for a lot of folks, DCP, the Department of City Planning, is a name that they might have heard, but they may not be very familiar with what it does or why this is an important organization. What is DCP and why is it such a large focus of Mi Casa's work?
Yeah, so the Department of City Planning is the folks who do the approval of going into a rezoning. So they right now, for them to allow for the city to move forward with the rezoning, and as well recently have approved the 4 new jails that have occurred that have been voted into for New York City. And then that was also a way de Blasio used the town halls as a way to maneuver and skip through processes regarding that specific issue, But in terms of gentrification, they are approving they're the ones that say yes or no if a rezoning should move forward or not. And at this point, they're the first step in a ways where then everything just trickles down. And they have that power to be able to say actually, how, and they have that power to state what is your process and how are you actually involving community and how will this be truly grassroots community organizing where you're hearing from folks who are affected, who will be affected in these communities.
One of the most contentious aspects of the Department of City Planning's plans here in Bushwick is something called upzoning, a type of rezoning that allows for taller, denser buildings in the community. Why is that so important, that the height of a building changes potentially the character of the neighborhood? For folks who maybe haven't thought a lot about what it means for a neighborhood to be rezoned and what something that sounds as straightforward as the height of a building has significant consequences for things like gentrification. Could you connect those dots?
So it's definitely so many different things. First, the buildings that are being constructed, we have to look at the economical perspective. The rents that will be set for those buildings is the AMI, the average medium income. And those AMIs are those rents will be about $3,000 at its like highest. There's a certain apartments that will go at 60% AMI. But overall, anyone living, any apartment, new apartment in those new buildings, those rents will be extremely high for the income they're surpassing the income of like residents that are already in this neighborhood. So in Bushwick, folks are not making, 120% AMI, or $50,000. Folks are at, $20,000, $25,000, and there are even folks who are making $15,000. And you are essentially, in the economical perspective, you are essentially already blocking all local residents who may want to move out of their homes for something, for a better, amenities or better setup, and then maybe they want to live in a better location, but in their neighborhood. But you're already purposely already blocking them from being able to rent those apartments because the rents will be so high. Second is, the next thing in connection to the rent is who will be able to afford those rents. New folks who are not part of this neighborhood. And it's just, you're going to have, I think it's like, I always think about how it's all connected in different cities. And I think a lot about California in terms of, my sister lives over there. And she lives in Rialto, and she's already stating, and this is a non-gentrified area, very low income suburbia. But she's already stating that, it's very, expensive. And then she doesn't want to move anywhere else in California because San Francisco is gone because of the Google companies. And I think about that here in connection to that because, Bushwick has changed so radically in terms of what is in the neighborhood and who has come here. And it's sparse, it's no longer, there's less and less bodegas, there's less and less community spaces. And so the folks who will be coming into the neighborhood will be most likely our age, millennials who are up and coming and have, $50,000 salaries, $60,000 salaries or more. And it'll be last families. From my perspective, also just it will not be affordable for low income families anymore. And so they will continue moving out of state as they have been for the past 10 years since Bushwick has been changing. So that's the second thing of economic, who will be coming, the demographics of who will be coming. And then as well, the third thing for me is the cultural aspect that will no longer be. So it's not just a building. It's like people think of it here, okay, 16 stories, it'll be too high. Why not? It'll create more space. But it's not just a building. You're blocking who's going to be in those buildings. You are allowing you have a very specific focus who you want in this community. And third is, by doing those first two things or allowing those first two things, you no longer have the community that created this community. So that culture, that cultura that makes Bushwick is no longer here. It's been black, brown, and then my family's Mexicana, and I just remember so many folks and so many bodegas were Puertorriqueños, and so many folks you see a lot of street vendors that are Ecuadorian, and it's just so many different things and different institutions like these bodegas and that make the culture, and so many block parties and so many barbecues on the street, and all of that will be gone. And I think that a lot of people take that as a way where, well, things will change, things are happening, but this is a sense of community. So many people have left their country and have built community here, and to have that sense of community is a sense of survival. If we don't have that, that tia or, that friend, or, it no longer is a friend, that's my tia too. It's just, we're here to support each other in so many different ways. Oh, you don't have this? Okay, it's not just, it's for food, it's for money, it's for daycare. It's all these things that, in essence, we do a survival of like a bartering. That doesn't necessarily involve these new institutions and these ways of like capitalism. We're trading in services because this is how we like are able to take care of each other. And I think a lot of that will be gone, and most of it is already gone. But that's the main thing. Well, it's all these things that are encompassing it.
Mi Casa has a pretty clear-cut stance on rezoning. What is your approach to the rezoning process?
No rezonings at all. At this point, it has historically been known that it has not been for Black and brown folks. I think in Williamsburg, we always go back to that because community folks have tried to work with the city, tried a whole decade, and, have so many conversations. And in the end, they didn't get anything from it. Everything changed. You can see that on the Bedford waterfront. That is the epitome of what it looks like when the city says that they want to work with you, and it's just ironic because I grew up going to that waterfront, and it really is for a very specific demographic, either for tourism, for white folks, for even bougie people of color who have that. And it goes back to class. I think a lot of folks talk about, mixed race and class as interchangeably, but overall, the city wants you to talk about those things interchangeably, but it's not, and it goes back to these very specific issues. And then I think in gentrification, those two things have very specific places in it. But within the city, they're just talking about income, and they just want to who can afford it and how can we continue to profit off those folks.
In other words, on paper, people who are in favor of rezoning may argue that it creates opportunities for affordable housing, but in practice, in places like Williamsburg, we've seen that communities of color and low and middle income communities are typically disadvantaged in the process.
Are completely disadvantaged, completely. It is just not for us. And if the city, I think New York City has a huge history of it not being for Black and brown poor people. And then they have to do better. This is a city where we're calling out, within this rezoning of Bushwick, Mi Casa, No Casa is stating that the city needs to just do better. In terms of not just this, but against all these other issues that are connected towards the displacement, the brutality against Black and brown bodies. The city just needs to continue to figure out what is their, how are they going to continue building the city for the future that includes us.
Perhaps the biggest difference between Mi Casa No Es Su Casa and other organizations involved in the conversation around rezoning is that Mi Casa believes a truly equitable process simply can't take place within the city's power structures as they currently exist.
It cannot take place with these existing power structures. It has been shown, and I think that we continue to work within these institutions, we're no longer going to be here. If we continue to believe that these institutions can change, we will become stagnant, and won't even be here to become stagnant. And at this point, it is no longer useful to have them, and we need community creating decisions for us. We need folks who are actually living in these neighborhoods, who are actually building in these neighborhoods to be making those decisions about the neighborhood.
After the break, Nancy on why time is of the essence for Mi Casa and anyone in the neighborhood who wants their voice to be heard in the rezoning process.
This episode is brought to you by 100 Bogart, a new building in Bushwick, Brooklyn that provides offices, co-working, event spaces, and a brand new podcast recording room. Have you been dreaming of starting your very own podcast in Brooklyn? You can now rent space in 100 Bogart's custom-built podcast room to record interviews, voiceover, and commentary. The room is fitted out with 2 microphones, mixing board, and a MacBook Pro running Pro Tools. You can rent the space by the hour, and a rental of an hour or more includes a 100 Bogart co-working pass. That means complimentary coffee, tea, and access to your own desk for the rest of the day. So what are you waiting for? Get started on your next audio project. 100 Bogart has the space and amenities you need to kickstart your podcast. Learn more at 100bogart.com or call their team at 718-362-3539. Join Heritage Radio Network on Monday, November 11th for a raucous feast to toast a decade of food radio. Our 10th anniversary Bacchanal is a rare gathering of your favorite chefs, mixologists, storytellers, thought leaders, and culinary masterminds. We'll salute the inductees of the newly minted HRN Hall of Fame, who embody our mission to further equity, sustainability, and deliciousness. Join us to explore the beautiful Palm House and Yellow Magnolia Cafe at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where you'll taste and imbibe to your heart's content, and bid on once-in-a-lifetime experiences and tasty gifts for any budget at our silent auction. Join the party. Tickets are available now at heritageradionetwork.org/gala.
At the heart of Mi Casa's work seems to be a belief that the best future for the neighborhood is one that invests in the current community.
They should be able to invest in what we currently have. There is so many, instead of being able to begin that cascade of that will continue to affect our lives, they should begin to do that work, what is affecting us. And, there's just so many public schools in the neighborhoods right now that don't have any resources. There is so many parks that are underdeveloped. There are all these things. And I think that, BCP talks about parks and we're going to develop them, we're going to create more space. Actually, Bushwick is said to be known to have a lot of green space. But in actuality, who will it be for? And then that's always the question that we go back to. And it's a very most basic question. And I think that it's wild to me that DCP, Antonio Reynoso, our council member, Rafael Espinal, how do they state these questions and then don't feel like they need to stop this process? These are folks that have been, are from New York and have been, living in these spaces and are from, and I think it's also just like, it goes back to class. Once you jump a class, you begin to start to feel that the process works, start to feel that anyone can do it, but that is the problem, and that is the issue of where we need to remember, where we came from.
Mi Casa, of course, isn't alone in trying to shape the conversation around rezoning here in Bushwick.
So currently, nonprofits are also part of this decision. nonprofits have always been part of rezoning decisions. The city has always reached out to folks in the community. So currently, the current nonprofits are Rise Borough, Make the Road, CUF, and these organizations have really have a stake in it. Riseboro will be able to have new developments. They will be able to construct and take part of what is the senior housing. And I think overall, these organizations have a lot of weight to this decision because first they have membership. And so they have folks who are part of their organization, not necessarily who are, part of calling out, the city as well. They talk about there's so many different issues that these organizations focus on. But overall, and I have been talking about this with folks about how organizations who are, when we're talking about low income communities and Black and brown folks, and these are these organizations, these nonprofits their membership is them, low income, poor folks, like Black and brown folks. So when we talk, and so our questions, I've been going through this, is why are they allowing this to happen? And I understand, and I think that they truly have this thought that this will be good for Bushwick, that this will be better for their members. I know that Make the Road stands as like bad rezoning is not a good rezoning, and so they have a specific, specific what is it? These organizations have a specific, have alienated what they specifically want from their council member. And I think these organizations are completely necessary to be in our neighborhood. They do a lot of immigration work. They do a lot of housing rights. And they continue to teach people about those two rights. And as well, just be able to, and they do a lot of like community programming. And without that, a lot of people will be falling into the cracks. But it is to be able to look at what the history is, what the historical history has been with, the city working with nonprofits, and has it been good? How do you could work with the city and in a ways where it's allowing you to continue doing that important work of housing and immigration and community programming and all that without having to say yes to a rezoning. You could continue being, doing all these things, and all of that is so important and necessary because we need those resources, and resources that are not they're not charging us for them. But you could, pause and state, is this really going to be good? Is this actually going to work for my membership? And, it goes back to capitalism and how, you want to continue to profit. You have like Riseboro has that stake in it of developments, and you could just say, let's pause this. Can we actually be inclusive and not only allow, our memberships as like nonprofits, because it's also very to be part of these voices, but how do we continue to push forth a more inclusive community town hall? How do we continue to push forth more folks in Bushwick and Bed-Stuy, who's a part of them, will be affected, and overall it will spill over, to be more aware of this process. And everything in the city, they want to be able to rush it. It's a sense of time is money.
Do other organizations in the neighborhood share Mi Casa's stance of complete opposition to rezoning? And have you partnered with any other organizations in the neighborhood as part of your work?
We partner with a lot of local grassroots groups, and it's BAND, Brooklyn Anti-Gentrification Network, and across the city, who are always, fighting their own rezonings as well. And overall, we're all on the same page where it's, no rezoning will ever help us in a ways where we need it. But in specific, if we're speaking in like nonprofits, right now these are the main ones, and I think there's more, and we're always working with other organizations that are finding ways to we're always trying to figure out who can be a voice in that space, in that nonprofit work, because we're all local grassroots groups, but right now it's zero to none for nonprofits. I mean, it's a lot of politics within that world, and it's about who, overall, and a lot of people don't talk about it, but it's about who has power over the decision making of how the neighborhood will look like, and how do we move away in a ways where it could be, how do we move away from this idea of power where, it's more about how do we allow for decisions to, goes back to benefiting the actual people. And I think a lot of folks get into their ego and into capitalism and all these things. But yeah, we're working with Brooklyn Anti-Gentrification Network. There's always right now the big action against CCP has allowed us to really build a more bigger initiative in terms of how gentrification creates all these trickles all these other issues. So it was against the no new jails and Queens Neighborhood United and Take Back the Bronx. So all these groups, it's not just Bushwick who's out here trying to fight for Bushwick. It's all these neighborhoods fighting for all of us. And that's what we're telling the city, that we know what we need and we know how to be able to protect our community.
Mi Casa's window for influencing the city's bureaucracy, however, may be closing as the group is working against a planned start to what's called the ULURP process, the formal procedures by which the city makes changes to land use.
Right now, we are working against the timeline of December vote. So right now we're waiting there's going to be I believe there's a set meeting for Community Board 4 and the third Wednesday of December. So we want to not go through that ULURP process, and we are fighting against that because the council members will be voting for this to go through. And once that, it's already known that once it goes through that step, it becomes a legality. It becomes of like, how do we legally fight this? And we're pushing before we even get to that, we even get to that point, we want to begin to like actively grassroots fight against, towards what, our council members, we voted them in. And this is something that they have to be continuously reminded. And I think this is just one step towards this timeline is so specific because we're just a month away from it. I think people are have a veil over their eyes, all the community board and everyone who's been involved in this, and it's just like, remind yourself that rents have not stopped increasing. And whether and just a speculation of these luxury buildings being built, that's just a speculation of like, oh, we're waiting for that rezoning to occur. It's already allowing for more harassment, more displacement, and landlords are already, pushing folks out, and that's just a speculation. So it's just like wild for all these folks to not see that. So this is, we're fighting against the December timeline before it goes into that process. And once it gets into that, it'll fast track it.
In the meantime, Nancy and Mi Casa plan to keep fighting for a process that feels fairer and more equitable for the community.
Yeah, rezoning is racist, is completely racist. And we are no longer, we're voicing this out, and we're no longer, being timid about it. And I think that a lot of folks need to understand that if you want to be, currently look at what's currently happening through the plan, the Bushwick City Plan, Bushwick Community Plan, but also just look at the past, and even in East Harlem, that there was organizations there, Community Voices Heard, try to work with folks and with that. And it's just like all these different things where there have been efforts, the people do want to have access to housing. That is not a question. That has never been an issue of that we're fighting against. We just want affordable housing. We haven't been shown a plan that is affordable to us.
If you're interested in getting involved with Mi Casa no es su casa or learning about how you can get involved in the broader movement around rezoning, getting in touch with Nancy and the team is easy.
So you can contact us. We have a couple of actions coming up and internal meetings that will be happening that we definitely want more folks to be involved. You can follow us first just to stay. If you can be involved by in 2 tiers. You can be actively involved, attending all these meetings, participating in the actions. And within that, you can also just participate in resharing the information that we're sharing on our social media. So you can, on Instagram as Mi Casa Resiste, and you can also DM us if you want to be directly involved. And then if you want to email us and talk more about it, you can email us at micasanosucasa@nyc@gmail.com. There's just so many different ways you can be actively involved, which is through social media, which is a powerful tool that many folks are utilizing in all movements. And then especially as Instagram has continued to block folks, and it's part of the system as well.
We've got all that info and more in the show notes for this week's episode. We'd like to extend our sincere thanks to Nancy and the Mi Casa team for sharing more about their work around one of the most consequential discussions happening in the neighborhood today. And as always, we'd also like to thank you for listening this week. If you enjoy Bushwick Podcast, you can do us a huge favor by telling a friend, or even by leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, which helps us reach more new listeners with stories like these. We'll be back with another story you won't want to miss, but in the meantime, we'd love to know what you're interested in hearing and how we can do better. Get in touch by emailing us at hello@hearbushwick.com or DMing us on our Instagram @BushwickPodcast. We can't wait to hear from you, and we'll see you soon.
This program is powered by Simplecast.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter @heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the heart at the top right of our homepage.
Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
It's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be, and realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next farm bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.